Good morning, my friends. This is round two attempting to do this particular video. Tried to do one yesterday, but traffic and the weather would not cooperate with me and my job. Anyway, continuing my revisitation of MERPs or ICE, Iron Crown Enterprises, Middle Earth or MERP. This is another one of the role-playing adventure modules that they created. As I said before, ICE is creates modules in two different types. The standard, go-to module that you're familiar with from just about any game system that's out there, and the ones where they go into a little bit more depth about the location and the environment, because it's a small piece of a big puzzle, right? They're world building based off of J.R.R. Tolkien's creation. As I said, gotta love the map work. It's pretty great, you know. There goes my phone. Maybe get some color. Is that better? Yeah. Every time I look at these maps, I really like them for a number of reasons. I mean, these are not only poster worthy. You could frame some of this stuff and put them on the walls, but it reinforced my style of map making from an early age. When I first started, it was all hex maps, and I got my introduction into map making by not so much by Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but by things like Judges Guild. And if you've ever seen one of the Judges Guild's maps, you'd understand they use an older system, and it's more true to the cartography or whatever that's called of map making. So it's just more than a scribble on a piece of paper. Nothing wrong with a scribble on a piece of paper if it works. I'm just saying, right? This particular module is set in the Nerimador, and I never can pronounce these words properly, these names. It's basically a almost backwater area of Arthedain in Arnor, western Arnor at the foot of the Blue Mountains. It's an area that's not heavily populated and barely touched on in any of the books, in any of the novels. I don't think that anybody in the movies or anything come close to it. The setting sets up some basic information on the location, the Blue Mountains, the climate, the foothills, the flora and fauna. And as I've said before, I do like ICE's addition of the plants and animals, because I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but to me, and this is probably more from my old school mindset, that when you go adventuring and you're out in the wilderness and you're traveling from point A to point B, and I like that part. I include that in a lot of my campaigns. I think it's imperative. It's easy to do the cinematic pop where you just bang from this location to this location, and everything in between was just, it just hurry up and ignore it. But yet most of your skill sets and things like weather to change, climate, travel, food, all that stuff, well, that's what that's for. I mean, that's really what that's for, and of course that's part of a mechanics-based game, I guess. And I've made that argument in the past too. A lot of people don't quite get it, but to me, I'm not saying plan out, plot every day of travel. I mean, yeah, you can fast forward in elements of it, but I like to include a couple, 2 or 3 random days of travel between this place and that place, and I make time. So I mean, if it takes you 3 weeks to go from the town to where the adventure is going to happen, then so be it. We're going to have at least 3 or 4 encounters along the way of you traveling and utilizing your skill sets. And those encounters don't necessarily have to involve things you got to kill. I mean, we're back to that meta gaming or hack and slash mindset, where it's got to be a bad guy, it's got to be a beastie, got to be a magical beast or something that I can hack and slash at to get experience. Well, you don't have to do that to get experience. I mean, I guess I got to be careful because I don't want to stretch this, and that this whole thing is a topic or something, another installment by itself. Anyhow, we deal with things like herbs and plants. Well, animals, they do include insects, monsters, domestic animals, and then the peoples of the cultures of the area. Now, like I said, once again, if you're traveling, the lion's share of what you should encounter is everyday things wild animals, challenges, excuse me, like trying to get across the flooded river or a rock fall blocking the pass or something like this. You can still gain experience for overcoming an obstacle, a challenge, part of the adventure, right? And sometimes interesting sidebars come out of stuff like this. It's just I'm back on that rant. Uh, the people and the cultures, the Dunedain, which is of course the high men, the Aragon's people, if you will, who populate the area, and they're in small numbers. The majority of humans in the area are called rivermen. These are tribes of common men, if you will, that set up small villages and towns alongside the rivers, and they do most of the trade and traveling, moving people around, that kind of stuff, in and around most of Western Middle Earth. You know, not to say that that's everybody, but it's true. And then there's a subsection on the dwarves of the Nagrim, otherwise the descendants of those who once inhabited the ruined cities of Norgrad and Belgos. This is also the neck of the woods where Thorin Oakenshield and his company originated from. In the Hobbit, they had fled Erebor after Smaug took over, and they wandered a while, and eventually they joined these other dwarves in the Blue Mountains to try to set up some kind of life. They prospered, but not nearly completely close to what they were in Erebor, and it always irked them. That's one of the reasons that it drove Thorin to eventually want to retake his homeland, and the fact that it was his family, Durin's homeland, and not the Blue Mountains. The Blue Mountains are the homeland of two different dwarven tribes, two of the seven dwarven kings, if you will, their descendants. So while they were welcome as dwarves, there's always contention, I imagine. To my knowledge, MERP, ICE never caught around to creating a module or a source book for the Blue Mountains or those dwarven kingdoms, although I'm sure it had been on the potential things to do list before the company decided to stop producing this stuff, which is sad. We're dealing with the elves. The elves in this particular area are related to Linden, the Blue Havens, or what is it? Place where the elves sail from. Círdan and his people. And speaking of that, we got Círdan. His stats, basically another NPC, and I can't harp on that enough. Once again, this guy, you're only using maybe a few times, but the NPC stats that somebody went to a lot of effort to create are here. So several others, why not make use of them in other game campaigns? Like I said, I've copied these guys and other NPCs for years, and I put them together in a binder, and now things change. We got technology today. We got laptops, computers. You can do that much easier. You just scan it, and then you can just pull it out of a file and put it over to your game file. And then when you're done, you put it back in your file. Hey, back in the day, when I first started, we didn't have this stuff. I'm just saying we didn't have this stuff. And we ended up doing, in my case, I used the binders. And the reason I chose binders was I could take one out, I could move it over here to use it for the campaign, and I could put it back in my binder in alphabetical order. That way I could go back and grab them if I needed them at another point. All right, then we go on to towns and villages, the managed settlements. This gives you a couple examples of that. Then we get into the actual adventure part, which is most of this module. There's the Legend of the Ice Caves. Some beautiful map work, even non-colored map work. I do love the elevation markings and stuff like that. The artwork here is a little bit shady. I'm not sure who they got. Not so much. Not as good. It's not totally up to snuff as what they're usually produce, but it's going to happen. Let's see. Among the foothills of Blue Mountains, many tales of immense wealth and bottomless chasms are told by the local folk. Most of these are just legend, mythical story, and amuse young children. And some magnificent treasures do lie in the Blue Mountains. The once great dwarven cities of Norgod and Belgos, and the gold coins, fist-sized gems, and enchanted swords laying in their flooded halls provided mightiest of these myths. Other stories exist, but most are elaborate works of fiction, spun in imagination, small, unskilled bards. However, legends, no matter how tall or how imperative or imaginative, are almost always possess a grain of truth. Isn't that the core of our young adventure hook? You know, the young PCs sitting in their village or their town, listening to these stories, finally get inspired to go on an adventure that either, you know, three out of four times ends up with a group dead. You know, this is where your more experienced adventurers show up at this particular place, following the clues and discover all these bones and or corpses. You know, that's kind of how they got there. Something to think about, right? I think I've talked about that in the RPG Brigade's forum lately. And then we go on the tasks. And then there's the next adventure, no sense of humor, setting. Nice little. I like these two. Once again, gosh, the Lazy GM. Really think I have changed my moniker. The Lazy GM, pre-made stuff, already made by some other people, and all I got to do is repopulate it and retool it to use it as whatever I need without having to go to all the effort of recreating something from scratch, which I like to do, don't get me wrong, but it's time consuming. Excuse me. Jesus, like I said, I don't care how much sleep I get, what time of the day or night I do these things. I'm always yawning. Cannot help it. I'm under caffeine. I'm loading myself with caffeine. Doesn't matter. And the next adventure, Sulligan Barrows, basically messing with the undead. Not a good thing. The setting, the maps. Look at these things, all right? That's what I'm talking about. How can you not want to use these and reuse these? Now, grant you, if you're playing with the same group of people for years, then maybe you need to either have an extreme library of stuff, which I do, or make a lot of your own stuff. But if you have a lot of smaller groups or you roll over players, then it's still a lazy man's way of doing things. There's nothing wrong with it. And back to the traditional NPC charts and tables that ICE likes to include in all their stuff. Now, like I said, Rogues of the Borderland, for the most part, it's just introducing a small corner of the world, and you've got three adventures in there, easily for early level, low level stuff, good starting places for what would become a group of heroes who will go on to bigger and greater things. Rogues of the Borderlands, it's a good module. If you can get your hands on it, I'm sure it would translate over to any game system fairly easily, and especially Dungeons and Dragons. You know, if you really want that ease of play, there you go. Till next time.